Darkcast Network, indie pods with a dark side. Hello and welcome back to Fuck That. One quick thing before I jump into this week's episode. I always say this at the end, and I know that probably 99% of you, if not 100% of you, don't listen to anything that I say at the end. And that's okay, because I don't listen to what podcasts have to say at the end of theirs either. So don't worry, I'm not mad at you. But I did want to let you know that I have an Apple subscription channel, so you can access ad-free content there, as well as Patreon. I have a couple of different tiers on Patreon. The top tier, you get free merchandise, vinyl stickers, access to sales. I have a private Discord community. And then additionally, I have bonus content and archived episodes and early episode release dates. So check me out there. It's F That Pod on Patreon. And thank you to everybody that has recently subscribed on Apple and on Patreon, or if you've just subscribed to my podcast recently on whatever platform you listen to, welcome and thank you for that as well. All right, I'm done. Let's jump into the episode. This week, I am covering a cult whose flavor of Kool-Aid is intergalactic space dimensions. After this cult's guru, Amy Carlson, ghosted the material plane that we know as Earth, the group did what any self-respecting cult would have done in that situation. They rebranded, leaving followers reading the stars for a sign, any sign at all, that they didn't just board the intergalactic equivalent of the Titanic. Today, I'm going to be discussing Love Has Won, which is now known as 5D Full Disclosure. Don't ask me what that name means because I could not tell you. Although we are going to be talking about 5D and 3D in this episode. To understand how Love Has Won came about, we have to understand Amy Carlson, who was their mother god and founder. But before I dive into Amy's life, I do just want to say that, especially with this particular cult, it's very easy for us to look at somebody like Amy and immediately pass judgment. Amy did bad things, and I'm going to cover them in this episode. But Amy did have a life, a whole life prior to when she met this person that influenced her into giving up her entire life and moved to Colorado. So what I'm trying to say with all of this is I think that it's important for us to acknowledge the bad things that she did, but also to understand that she was a different person prior to this. And I think it's also important to look at somebody's trauma and history. Now, obviously, this doesn't negate Amy's subsequent decisions, but nonetheless, it is a part of her story. So I do want to talk about who she was before she went down this path. Amy Carlson's life before forming Love Has Won was relatively ordinary. Amy Renee Stroud was born on November 30th of 1975 in Kansas, and Amy was known to be a straight A student. She took her studies very seriously. But Amy had experienced trauma in her life, and one of the biggest traumas of her life was her parents' separation and the subsequent custody battle between her mother and father after they separated. The family dynamic further changed when both of her parents remarried, and this obviously introduced new and very complicated familial relationships that shaped her upbringing. According to those that were close to Amy, she had a very difficult relationship with her stepmother, and honestly, that is so fucking relatable. During Amy's teenage years, she led a life that, on the surface, seemed very typical alongside of her peers. Amy was known for her participation in her church's choir, as well as theatrical plays. According to an interview with Rolling Stone that I linked in the show notes, her younger sister said about Amy, quote, "She was the sister I looked up to and wanted to be. She was smart, beautiful, and she had an amazing voice." As Amy transitioned into adulthood, she became a mother to 3 children and went through a marriage and divorce, all within her early 20s. And at some point, her family began to notice that there was a growing disconnect between Amy and her children. but they found that to be surprising. According to her family, the warm and inherently maternal instinct that was commonly associated with motherhood didn't come naturally to Amy, and she often left her children in the care of others. In the early to mid 2000s, there was a very pivotal shift that occurred, and this was facilitated when Amy began to explore New Age spirituality. Her involvement in the online spiritual network of forums, particularly one that's known as lightworkers.org, marked the beginning of her transformation into Mother God. Through this Lightworkers website, Amy met Amaranth White Eagle, who played a pivotal role in her transformation. Side note really quickly, I know that this is a really tough topic for a lot of people to listen to and discuss, but I think it's important because it becomes a very big part of this cult. There is a lot of weird QAnon conspiracy theories that haven't quite formed yet, but will later. And there's also a lot of racism and anti-Semitism. And I think that it's important to start when we consider who Amaranth White Eagle is. So White Eagle is a name that is associated with Indigenous people, but the problem with Amaranth White Eagle is that he is not. So I know that to some that might seem relatively benign, but I think that we can respect and learn about and be curious about cultures that aren't our own, but things like this just end up being hurtful and not appropriate. And then it obviously makes it way worse when the same group of people subsequently say things that are blatantly racist. It's not okay. So Amaranth became Amy's twin flame, which is a term that is commonly used in New Age circles. And apparently they use it to describe a deep soul level connection, often thought to be two halves of a single whole reunited across lifetimes. I know that lately there has been a lot of discussion that this is not healthy. To be honest with you, I don't know enough about twin flames. But this relationship was tumultuous, and it did eventually end. Now, under Amaranth's influence, Amy began to adopt the identity of a divine being. Quick side note again on this dude. I searched all over the internet for him and found a couple of his different social accounts. And then I had a field day and I couldn't stop looking at it. It was like, I couldn't look away. I was entranced but horrified all at the same time. It was very confusing. But anyway, he has a Twitter. He's active on Twitter. I'm not going to say his account handle. I want to respect his privacy, even though I think he sucks. But he tweets a lot at Elon Musk. And when I say that, I mean multiple tweets a day actively to Elon Musk. And they're just random. And he always types in all caps. He never not types in caps. That was an awkward way to phrase it, but I'm rolling with it. And I really think that's all I need to say about him, except I will read you one tweet and you're welcome. Quote, "If you ever have to know how life happens, it's not the gold, a glitter is more, like us playing together just like we do, being US, heart with an open bracket 3, Sawyer." And then there is a YouTube link inserted there, but it's not actually linked because it's meshed into the text. Another open bracket 3 for a heart. "Yeah, we got us and love tickles, the wise as hearts in love forever, barefoot running free." Yes, I too like to be barefoot running free, Amaranth. Amy increasingly identified with this spiritual role that our barefoot little friend helped her shape, eventually claiming experiences of paranormal phenomena and divine and otherworldly communications. Once Amaranth convinced Amy that she was, in fact, a divine being, Amy began to experience these phenomena. And her first experience occurred in 2007 when she stated that an out-of-this-world voice told her that she was going to become President of the United States. Amy posted about this. A lot of these websites are no longer up, and so you have to access them through website archives. And you can access this through the Wayback Machine, through the Internet Archive. No, I'm not making that up. It is a thing. So if you feel curious, you can look it up that way. But she did write about this first experience, and she said, quote, "I am cleaning the kitchen, baby just down for a nap, and I feel a tap on my shoulder and a whisk, I think she meant wisp, of air in my left ear. I'm just picturing a whisk that you use to, whisk eggs, like passing by her ear. All right. Anyway, so she felt the whisk of air in her left ear. And then I heard a lower toned voice, not really even a voice. It was like a message a violin would play in its music, and it said, President of the United States. I thought, what? What in the world does that mean? I dismiss it, and then I hear, you are going to be President of the United States. Honestly, this doesn't even seem that far-fetched to me based on the candidates that we've had over the past few elections, so this seems completely viable. However, I'm not sure that an otherworldly presence said that to her. Perhaps it was just her deep-seated aspirations. I don't know. But unfortunately, in late 2007, Amy made the decision to leave her husband, her children, her job as a manager at McDonald's, and her family to join Amaranth in Colorado. And this move marked the beginning of what would eventually become the Love Has Won cult, which was initially known as the Galactic Federation of Light. The early stages of the group's formation involved Amy creating content for various online platforms, and she used these platforms to share the messages that she claimed were of celestial and spiritual importance. Initially, this content revolved around her spiritual reporting, and she would record these messages that she felt were being conveyed through her from higher powers. Obviously, this gave Amy a ton of confidence, and as her confidence in her role as a spiritual leader grew, so did the originality and specificity of her teachings. And her teachings would eventually diverge from the aggregated New Age concepts into her own unique doctrine that was distinctly Love Has Won in early 2009. And around that time is when Amy's relationship with her twin flame, the barefooted frolicker Amaranth himself, ended. Once this relationship ended, Amy decided to transform herself into a full-on deity. Once Amy's relationship with her twin flame ended and she transformed into this fully fledged deity, she got together with a man, and I tried to pinpoint exactly when this happened. Most sources say 2014, but I'm not 100% sure that this is the year that it happened. Sometime around then, she ended up getting together with a guy named Miguel, who eventually became known as Archangel Michael Silver. Miguel is very significant to this story because he was the first actual member of Love Has Won. And apparently this was solidified because Miguel had lung cancer. He then had a lung removed, but he wholeheartedly believed that Amy was responsible for healing him. So that threw him deep into the throes and beliefs of Amy and her cult. Miguel was a very important member of this cult because in 2019, he ended up getting them labeled as a 501c3 nonprofit. Just let that simmer for a minute. They were able to register like that. It's incredible, really. In 2018, Amy met her second and last twin flame, Jason Castillo, and he ended up becoming a very big mouthpiece and important member in the organization. So from the time that Amy left the weird, barefooted, running around dude to the time that she became her own deity and started Love Has Won, their structure really transformed, eventually solidifying around Amy's central figure as Mother God. The group produced a constant stream of content, which included daily live streams where Amy and her followers would share updates on their spiritual warfare against the forces of darkness. I'm gonna get into that. Don't you worry. We're going to talk about that. She would offer personal revelations and engage with their growing audience. But before I continue detailing how they operated, I want to talk about their beliefs. I love you all so much, and I'm dedicated to getting it right so badly that I read a document called the Transitionary Government Ascension Guide, and it is lengthy. There are so many documents to read online, from the archived pages of Love Has Won to now the 5D full disclosure website. So I mainly got this information from the Transitionary Government Ascension Guide. There are some changes from when it was written during the time of Love Has Won to now 5D, and I'll note those, but it took a lot of reading and disseminating what I was reading to get this summary correct. So just bear with me because it's going to be a lot. Okay, so to understand how Love Has Won came to operate and function, you must first understand the true story and history of Earth. According to the guide, Earth is the only planet that still exists in 3D consciousness, but 3D consciousness is the lowest vibrational planet in existence. So we're not doing well in terms of vibrations on Earth. I feel like there's some truth to that, probably. Humanity is fucked, but I digress. So Earth was a school for souls to incarnate into physical bodies, and they did this so that they could experience the illusion of separation and duality in order to obtain greater wisdom and experience. After the fall of Atlantis, and it's important to note that Atlantis was in 3D vibrations and Lemuria, which was in 5D consciousness, and this was 26,000 years ago, the Dark Ones overtook Earth. Now, at the time, both Atlantis and Lemuria were inhabiting Earth at the same time. Okay, so we've got Atlantis and Lemuria in Earth, right? Atlantis, 3D vibrations, Lemuria, 5D consciousness, and Earth is vibrating real low. Amy, aka Mother, when this was all going down 26,000 years ago, she was the queen of Lemuria. So she was all about 5D consciousness. However, Amy, Mother, queen of Lemuria, was betrayed by her husband, Horus. I feel like you can't trust a Horus, so I feel like that checks out. And what Horus did was he gave the Atlanteans 5D technology. Remember, they're in 3D vibrations. Lemuria is in 5D consciousness. So Horus betrayed Amy, the queen of Lemuria, by giving the Atlanteans 5D technology. This is a big no-no because 5D technology cannot be used while in third dimensional frequencies. Duh. This caused an explosion between the timelines, and Mother God had to then ascend from the third dimension to stop humanity from going into a black hole. This fixed everything, and Earth was fully back to the third dimension. Unfortunately, the Anunnaki, who are some evil motherfuckers, came down to Earth and they pretended to be gods. And the dream machine technology was stolen. And this caused the implantation of the first fearful thought into collective consciousness for people on Earth. Apparently, everybody forgot about Mother and Father God, so these evil Anunnaki were using the fear that they implanted, using the dream machine technology to keep humans fearful and in a state of low consciousness. Imagine that. We're already vibrating really low. Now we've got this dream machine. The Anunnaki come down and they just bring us even lower. We are not vibing. This is just not good. Obviously, everything went to shit and a bunch of pissed off Earth souls, I think there were 144,000 of them, that's how many she was supposed to save, went to Mother and Father God and they were like, yo, we need you. Please become physical on Earth again. So Mom and Pop's God were like, okay, fine, twist our arm. We'll help you out. We all love an empathetic and helpful God. Do we not? We love it. So Mom and Pop's God tried this, and they tried this for thousands of years. But the problem is, they just kept getting murdered every single time they tried to ascend to Earth. You might be wondering to yourself, Ashley, why did you just say ascend to Earth when they were on Earth and they ascended up above Earth? And yes, I am wondering that too. Thank you for wondering that. You would think it would be descend, but the document explicitly states ascending downwards from where they already ascended upwards from. So I'm just going to roll with it. So they kept dying every time they tried to ascend to Earth. But don't you fret, my dear listeners. Fret not, because Mother finally did it. She nailed it. She made it out of the Matrix. I don't know what Matrix it is, but it says the Matrix. It might be the one with Keanu Reeves. I don't know. But she transformed all of the pain and suffering for humanity. Thanks, Mom. Can I get a thanks, Mom? Thank you, Mom. What is impressive about this is she only had a 1 in 7.8 billion chance of doing this. So that is truly an amazing feat. And I think that us that are earthbound are eternally grateful for that sacrifice. Apparently, all of us, every single one of us just sitting, hanging out on Earth, we've all agreed to an ascension. I personally distinctly remember agreeing to this. I don't know about you, but Earth is going back to 5D frequencies, and that means that we also have to do that, or else. It doesn't say or else, but I added that in for the drama. Now, here is where it truly gets interesting, and just hang on, we're almost done. I swear, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, so just work with me here. So the evil Anunnaki that I had mentioned before, they were the ones that fucked everything up and instilled fear into each and every one of us. I guess that's the reason why I have anxiety. I'm just going to blame it on these people. So they surrendered at some point, and this is where it gets really interesting because this is where the Illuminati stepped in. Allegedly, the Illuminati were reptilians that could manipulate energy, but they weren't good enough at being a reptilian, I guess, so they surrendered in 1996. Now, the new 5D guide says that this happened in 1994, so I think maybe they need to set their timeline straight. Was it 1996 where the reptilian Illuminati surrendered, or was it 1994? I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep at night until I know the real answer, so I'll be waiting with bated breath, but I just wanted to let you know about the discrepancy there. And then the Cabal took over. They controlled the planet until the White Hats, Mom and Pop's God, and their Galactic Federation of Light took over. So what all of this means is, I guess, just to sum it all up, thanks to the evil Anunnaki and the Atlanteans, we now have the right and left brain. And you might think that this is fine, as does science, but fuck what science has to say. That's not the case. We don't want this because this causes imbalance and illusion, because ego is the left brain. Fuck that. We don't need that shit. What we want is the right brain, because that is the creative part. It's how we connect to the 5D. It's how we connect to Mother God and to the Galactic Federation of Light and to our higher self. Higher thoughts are unlimited, and all possibilities exist in 5D and beyond. Sign me up. I want to ascend. So the whole purpose, our purpose on Earth, is to ascend. And in order to ascend, we have to become fully enlightened. We need to get to the 5D. We need to use our right brain, fuck the left brain. And according to the document, there's a lot of things that you can do. These are a lot of practices that are obviously adopted and used by Love Has Won. But this document itself is like 40 pages. So I'm just going to tell you one recommendation, and it is my personal favorite. Maybe you want to practice this at home. I don't know. Totally up to you. My personal favorite is called sun gazing. So apparently this is a powerful healing method. This organization, they wholeheartedly believe that staring directly into the sun will not blind you or damage your vision. Reading directly from the document, there's a quote that says, "If you want to jump right in the deep end, stare at the sun, holding your eyes open. Surrender to love and the heart." Please don't do this at home, like ever, especially if there is an eclipse. Thank you. Now, there are some recommendations that are anywhere from benign to what I actually think could be beneficial, like drinking water. Well, that's obviously beneficial, Ashley, come on. But meditating and stating positive affirmations to yourself throughout the day. Ultimately, there are 4 stages in the awakening process that brings you to ascension. And those 4 stages are the physical healing stage, the emotional healing stage, the mental healing stage, and the spiritual healing stage. So if you want to ascend, I just gave the cliff notes. Do with it what you will. When Mother God ascended down to Earth for the final time to save us all, that was the same day that she was born in her final form. So now, in present time, when all of this was going on, Amy was fighting a battle against the Cabal, who maintained control after the Illuminati reptilians could not handle it. The way that Amy led the cult, her leadership style, it was characterized by a blend of nurturing guidance with strict discipline. It was very good cop, bad cop. Love Has Won focused on communal living, shared finances, and a very strict regimen of spiritual and physical activities. And these all reflected Amy's vision of creating a community that was truly dedicated to ascension and achieving this higher state of 5D consciousness. As the group's following expanded, so did the intensity of the group's practices and the fervor of its message. Amy and the message of Love Has Won's narrative became way more intricate, very much apocalyptic, and began to detail her struggles against the cabal forces and her role of a divine savior. The group's activities and beliefs positioned Amy as the central figure in an epic and, quite frankly, very intense spiritual battle, which eventually became the core of the identity of Love Has Won. Again, the formation of this cult was rooted in Amy's evolving beliefs that she was this divine entity. But eventually, Amy went on to claim that she was a 19 billion-year-old being who had birthed all of creation. And she then stated that she was reincarnated 534 times. These reincarnations included Jesus, Joan of Arc, Marilyn Monroe, and Cleopatra. The group also incorporated beliefs like the Lemurians. Remember, this is where she was queen. Atlantis and Lemuria were in Earth at the time, 26,000 years ago. So these Lemurians were living within Mount Shasta in California. And Amy also had tight connections to Donald Trump, the spirit of Robin Williams. I don't like this. Who she claimed was Archangel Zadkiel. Like, there's no fucking way that the spirit of Robin Williams would ever be involved with this. Come on, leave him alone. But then the group also eventually adopted elements of the QAnon conspiracy theories. And we all know that QAnon is completely rooted in fact and is not at all extreme. Can't say that without laughing, sorry. But what I'm trying to say is, obviously, as members grew and Love Has Won gained notoriety, this obviously got to Amy's head. It would get to anybody's head. But this is where it becomes incredibly problematic, because the more it got to her head, the more power hungry she got, the more extreme her beliefs were, and these beliefs were therefore pushed to her followers and pushed out online for everybody to see. There were several instances where there were recorded live streams that had anti-Semitism, racism. I actually think that one of the best ways to demonstrate how little, actually, it wasn't even a little amount. They gave zero fucks about people and their culture and where they came from. So this is the best example. I'm going to jump ahead a bit to when Amy was near end of life and she was really sick. And we'll go back to the beginning and elaborate on that in a little bit. But at that point in time, the group was living in Crestone, Colorado, and they decided to go to Hawaii and take Amy there because they thought that it could potentially be healing. The problem isn't that they went there to potentially have Amy feel better. This is the problem. Amy gets there and she immediately just starts disrespecting Hawaiians and Hawaiian culture. And she does this by saying that she's Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of fire. You just don't do that. If you believe it, fine. Believe it in your head. Keep it to yourself. Quick word of advice. Sometimes thoughts are like balloons. You just need to let go of the balloon and watch it float up into the sky and hopefully get hit by a large jet and then just destroyed. Just keep it to yourself. This is just a dick waving move. Not classy, but they handled it and they were kicked out of Hawaii, which I love. I love everything about that. So now I'm going to circle back to their beliefs and practices, but I think it's important to demonstrate instances of racism that the group has had because it's one part of many parts of the controversy surrounding this cult. Before Mother God Amy ever got sick, members of Love Has Won lived together in a very tight-knit community in Crestone, Colorado. And they quickly became well known for a variety of unorthodox spiritual practices. But I think, in my opinion, the most controversial, I think probably society would agree as well as a whole. However, this was the most important to the group's income, was their online surgeries that they offered. Yes, I said online surgeries. So on top of the daily live streams that they had that they used for recruitment purposes, they also had fundraising, as well as promoting new age products and vitamin supplements. But their biggest cash cow were these etheric surgeries for $88. And apparently, they were able to remove sicknesses as well as negative energy in this online surgery. What I'm getting from this is that they were telehealth before medicine even went telehealth due to COVID. So I guess they were just ahead of their time. I don't know. Described as etheric surgeries, these were said to be non-invasive, obviously. Like, it fucking goes without saying. But they were performed remotely on individuals anywhere in the world. And Amy claimed to possess the divine capability to heal physical, emotional, and spiritual ailments through these surgeries. These procedures were marketed as a way to remove negative energies, blockages, and even entities. Ooh, spooky. From individuals, thereby restoring their energetic balance and well-being. According to the group, these procedures did not resemble any medical procedure known to conventional wisdom, but instead it was purely a metaphysical operation. Clients would not be physically touched or interacted with in any ordinary sense, but instead they would schedule a time and make a payment, after which Amy, sometimes she would be accompanied by other members of the group, would conduct the surgery at a distance with her mind, like Professor Xavier from X-Men. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be serious and professional, but it's Sunday and I have the Sunday scaries, so I'm feeling a little goofy. So when these surgeries would occur, clients were instructed to lie down at the appointed time, relax, and be open to receiving the healing. Amy and her team would then, according to their claims, tap into the client's energetic field. They would then identify and extract any negative energies or spiritual impurities. These sessions were sometimes accompanied by follow-up consultations. During these follow-up consultations, the results of the surgery would be explained, and then if need be, further spiritual guidance could be offered. I think it goes without saying that these surgeries were a source of controversy and skepticism, mainly due to the lack of any verifiable evidence of their efficacy, and also due to their cost. One of the discrepancies I ran into with my research was actually the cost of these surgeries. A lot of the sources that I read did mention what I said before about them costing $88. Some of those sources also said that that was the upfront fee, but then they also asked for donations on top of that. Some sources just said that they asked for donations. The overwhelming majority of the sources that I read made it seem like they had to pay up front and then donations were requested as well after. And honestly, just based on my research, I am inclined to believe that that is likely the case. But for full transparency, I just wanted to throw that out there. There were a lot of claims and a lot of negative talking about this surgery regarding the fact that people would spend hundreds on this. So I do think it seems like they probably made an upfront payment and then felt compelled for whatever reason to then make an additional donation, because it does seem that people ended up spending quite literally hundreds upon hundreds of dollars on these surgeries. So again, this was the group's biggest source of income, and a lot of critics of Love Has Won, including most of their former members, described these surgeries as nothing more than a scam. Former members said that it was just a way to exploit the vulnerable and people that were seeking help and feeling lost. At the time, there were a lot of concerns that people were beginning to raise about the psychological impact on those who underwent these surgeries, only to find out, hey, actually, my psychological state hasn't changed at all. Conversely, there could be a weird placebo effect that alters somebody's emotional state, perhaps in a negative direction, due to some suggestion that was made during this surgery. Regardless of the lack of scientific backing or any recognized medical basis, the concept of these etheric surgeries just provided a very compelling narrative for Love Has Won's followers. But more importantly, it really played into the larger Love Has Won story of spiritual warfare and ascension, with Amy being their powerful healer battling against the darkness of the world. So these surgeries added to the mystique and really solidified the followers' belief of Amy's persona and her alleged supernatural abilities. As I had mentioned before, there was almost a duality in her leadership between being kind and loving, but also very strict. So her leadership style within Love Has Won was very dynamic and multifaceted, but she was also described as a content creating machine. She would produce so many videos. I cannot even begin to describe daily producing content. She would post on social media multiple times a day, and she would write blog articles in an effort to spread the group's message, which was really her message. And her approach was very unconventional. She was very energetic, but she was very rash and harsh in her tone when she addressed her audience. And she absolutely did not shy away from offending anybody to make her point. Coming from someone that's blunt, we all love a blunt queen, but I'm not sure it's appropriate when you're performing telehealth surgeries and being racist online. It just doesn't seem fitting in that context. But her followers ate this shit up. As Mother God, they perceived Amy to be a being of pure love and enlightenment, and they attributed her harshness to the narrative that placed her in direct conflict with these dark forces, the cabal, that were attempting to suppress humanity's spiritual evolution into the 5D, 3D, whatever. Her followers believed that she was consistently the target of numerous assassination attempts by the cabal, and therefore, Amy's physical and mental well-being became a central concern within the group's collective narrative. This essentially just provided the group with a scapegoat, right? So because Amy led with controversy and some darkness, this alleged dark entity that was constantly attacking her was the perfect scapegoat to make an excuse for her bad behavior as a leader. Unsurprisingly, it wasn't long before the allegations of abusive behavior, the manipulation of followers, and the encouragement of estrangement from unsupportive family members ran rampant in Love Has Won. Amy enforced very strict control over the group's lifestyle, anywhere from their diet to their sleep to their finances, and former members described the environment as authoritarian, with Amy at times diving deep into alcohol use disorder, which, according to the group, they referred to it as her medicine to cope with the physical pain from her spiritual battles. Love Has Won faced several allegations of abuse under Amy's leadership, and these accusations from ex-members included accusations of physical abuse, sleep deprivation, and financial exploitation, and these were often intertwined and masked within the group's spiritual practices and beliefs. The group was subjected to emotional and psychological abuse. Members of the group were often subjected to very intense and emotional and psychological pressures. One of the practices, known as calling out, involved public shaming and humiliation within the group. Amy, as well as other high-ranking members, would call out individuals for their perceived spiritual failures. Sometimes this would happen in the group's daily live streams, which obviously could be watched by anybody. These sessions were known to be grueling, and the intent was to break down the individual's ego to enforce group conformity and dependence on Amy's leadership. The group practiced a technique that was known as hot seat sessions. A member would be placed at the center of attention, and this person who was in the hot seat would just be subjected to a never-ending slew of criticism and accusations from Amy as well as others. This practice would last for hours, and similar to calling out, it was another way to break down an individual's self-esteem and reinforce the group's control over them. Love Has Won also faced several allegations of physical abuse and neglect. Members were reportedly required to participate in very labor-intensive tasks, as well as adhering to very strict diets that often led to malnutrition. Amy's own declining health, exacerbated by excessive colloidal silver intake, was a form of self-neglect towards herself. And I think that this is an important example because I think this served as an extreme example to her followers and could have potentially normalized this neglectful behavior. Ex-members of the cult also accused them of extreme practices such as sleep deprivation, with members allegedly only being allowed to sleep between 3 to 5 hours per night. I'm going to quickly touch upon child abuse, but I'm going to circle back to it in a bit. The way that I actually discovered Love Has Won, because up until this point, I had never heard of them before, was that I came across a video on the internet quite a long time ago. I did try to find the full video today prior to recording so I could link it, but I can't. I do know that this video did end up getting Amy, as well as 2 of her young followers, onto Dr. Phil subsequently after this video went viral. I think they might show a clip of the video in the Dr. Phil episode if you can access that, but I cannot find the original video anywhere online, so I apologize for that. But what I remember about the video is that there are several people in the living room, like I stated, the main person being Amy, and there is a young child. I don't know that the age ever came out, but the child looked to be maybe 3, 4. It was a young child who was crying, and Amy, which, just to circle back to the beginning of the episode, what I think is astounding about this is that we're putting this person, Amy, in charge of a child, regardless of if she's Mother God. Her family said that she never had that maternal instinct. She never wanted to be around her kids. And yet here she is taking care of kids and making decisions for other people's kids years later is just astounding to me. And this kid's crying, like truly crying. It's not fake tears. This is genuinely a child who's in distress. And when she can't get the child to keep quiet, she's like, all right, you're going to go in the closet. And then they set a timer. I don't know if it was 5 minutes or 3 minutes or what, but they put the kid in the closet. They lock the kid in the closet. They take the kid out. The kid is even more upset, rightfully so. And she's like, do you want to go back in there? And I just remember watching this video and I was astounded. So it piqued my curiosity, and thus I discovered Love Has Won and found out that this wasn't the child's mother. This was a person who didn't even want anything to do with her own children and was then disciplining somebody else's children and not doing it in a productive or healthy way. When this child doesn't immediately stop crying, which as an adult, can we even do that? If we're hysterically crying, can we just snap our fingers and stop crying because somebody tells us so? No, it's just not possible. Jason then takes the child and puts the child back into the locked closet. I saw this video and I could not fucking believe it. The last thing I remember about the video is, and obviously this is just my assumption watching the video. Well, this part, there's also going to be a factual part, but in my opinion, it was evident to me that Amy was not sober at all. She was fucking 3 sheets to the wind, and she's talking to this child who's crying. And she grabs the child tight and she's cursing and she's like, surrender to mother, surrender. You need to fucking surrender. So anyway, this video traumatized me. I can't imagine the impact that this video had on this child, but that is how I discovered Love Has Won. And that is how their allegations with what is very obviously child abuse began. There are other instances of child abuse after Amy passed away, which I will cover when I talk about her death. But it is evident that the group exerted psychological control over its members, and they really solidified this by encouraging and sometimes forcing members of the group to cut ties with their family and their friends and to surrender their personal belongings and finances to the group and to follow Amy's directives without any question. This control often led to the manipulation of members' perceptions of reality, and it allowed them to surrender to Amy's alleged divine nature, and the legitimacy of her abusive behavior was really chalked up to spiritual testing or purification or things that she needed to do when alcohol was involved as a means to cope with her pain from the alleged spiritual attacks that she was constantly facing. The accounts of former members of Love Has Won, coupled with public documentation of the group's activities, painted a really clear picture of a cult that did nothing but abuse their members as a means of maintaining power and control over the people that were involved. And this all came to fruition in May of 2020 when the county sheriff's office received multiple complaints about the group for brainwashing and fraud. Unfortunately, nothing ever came of this, but there was one more very controversial incident that the group found themselves in that definitely is indicative of abuse. One member of the group was found wandering disoriented, naked, and dehydrated in the wilderness after being cast out by the group for not having the quote-unquote right energy. As I mentioned previously, Amy did suffer from alcohol use disorder, which got worse in the moments leading up to her death. And this became apparent in a lot of her live streams near the end. And it was also obvious that as her dependency escalated, so did the abuse that she demonstrated towards her members of Love Has Won. I'm going to play a clip of one of the live streams that did go live. It is a clip of Amy, so I'm just going to say trigger warning. It is really sad to hear because she's intoxicated and she is verbally abusing two of the members of the group. And I want to play this just to demonstrate the frame of mind she was in prior to her death, which I think is important to understand prior to discussing her death and the events leading up to it.
My vision was chicken parmesan. So the fucking atoms turn around on me and get me meatballs. I didn't say meatballs. I love meatballs. But I didn't fucking say that.
Holy shit, FF.
Chicken parmesan. I get fucked up every fucking moment by you fucking motherfucking whores. My atoms. I'm like, I just need a tequila. Like, it takes like 5 rounds of whores to get me a tequila. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You know what? You can take your half-ass God and shove it up your fucking ass! I'm gonna take another tequila shot? I'll fucking do that shit. Bitch!
I wanted to share that clip because Amy's later years were marred by significant health issues, and all of these were made public, and they were visible through the group's daily live streams and other content, and nobody stepped in, not a single follower. Amy's health decline was intertwined by her increasing alcohol consumption, which is something that her members excused and referred to as her medicine. This term was used by the group to suggest that her alcohol consumption was necessary to alleviate the immense physical pain that she was in and experiencing due to the spiritual energy work that she was doing. And the group allegedly believed that she was processing the negative energies of humanity, which in turn took a very severe toll on her body. As time went on, Amy's appearance became gaunter and her skin began to turn a bluish hue, which is a condition known as argyria, and this is caused by the ingestion of colloidal silver. And this ends up impacting the skin and mucous membranes, which then turns them to blue and gray. Love Has Won promoted colloidal silver as a cure-all, and Amy herself consumed it daily in very large and harmful quantities. Her health issues were often discussed in the context of her battle against the Cabal, which is the dark forces that we've discussed a few times throughout the episode, but they were allegedly attempting to assassinate her and thwart her mission. Despite Amy's visible decline and occasional requests for medical help, Amy's inner circle believed that seeking any help from conventional medical treatment would expose her to further risk. There was a deep-seated paranoia within the group that the medical establishment was infiltrated by the same malevolent forces that they were fighting against. Because they had these beliefs, there were instances when Amy specifically asked them to take her to the hospital, and her followers decided against it because they allegedly feared that doing so would lead her to more harm. There is a large part of me that wonders if perhaps her followers had a more malicious intent with refusing her medical treatment. Regardless of what you believe, I find it very hard to believe when you consider the devotion that followers have to their deity, their guru, whatever you want to call it. Extreme devotion, that they would do anything to keep that person safe. And yet here they are, watching her wither away. And it seems like they're not only refusing her medical treatment, but they are encouraging what seems to be causing her more harm. I don't know. Many people believe that the decision of her followers led to her death in a state that former members and her own family described as needless suffering, and I'm inclined to agree. It was obvious that Amy was in pain, and yet here she was, left to die in extreme amounts of pain. Amy died in April of 2021, but her death was not reported right away. No. Amy's body was eventually discovered in a home near Crestone, Colorado, wrapped in a sleeping bag and adorned with Christmas lights, set up almost as if it was a shrine. But the state of her body suggested that she had been deceased for quite a long time before she was found. Authorities ended up becoming alerted to her death by a member of the group who had returned to the residence and found her body. And they were like, what the fuck? This is obvious. She's been dead for a long time. So they notified the authorities, rightfully so. Because the circumstances of her death were unusual, this led to a police investigation and the arrest of several group members on charges related to corpse abuse, because they just left her there rotting, and child abuse, as there were not only adults, but children living in the home with her mummified remains. These charges were also later dropped. According to the coroner's report, Amy was 75 pounds when she passed, and they attributed her health decline, which led to her death, to be caused by chronic alcohol consumption, colloidal silver ingestion, and anorexia. Now, these events signaled a major turning point for Love Has Won, which led to the rebrand as 5D Full Disclosure. Following Mother God's passing, 5D Full Disclosure emerged as a new religious movement. And this new iteration of the group does continue to promote similar beliefs and projects, including a vision for humanity's evolution into higher love and unity frequencies, as well as the creation of a blueprint for heaven on earth. But they do note that there's a transition to 5D and quantum healing technologies based on sacred geometry and source consciousness, and I couldn't tell you what that means. I took calculus in college, but I did not take quantum healing. So what I can tell you is the transformation involved several key changes. So number one, name change, rebrand. Very smart in terms of marketing and PR. They adopted the name 5D Full Disclosure as a part of a broader rebranding effort. So this new name is supposed to reflect a continued emphasis on new age beliefs, but particularly the concept of fifth dimensional consciousness that we talked about earlier in the episode. You know, you got the 3D, 5D. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are experts on that by now. They adjusted the narrative. So without Amy, they had to adjust their narrative, and they began to teach that although Amy had passed from the physical world, she had ascended to a higher plane of existence, and she's still allegedly guiding the group spiritually. They are continuing practices. So they're continuing many of their previous practices under this new branding. They're still doing the online surgeries. But my favorite part about this is that, according to them, Amy is conducting these surgeries from the fifth dimension. I love it. Obviously, there's going to be leadership changes. Once Amy had passed, there was likely a power vacuum that emerged within the group, which is common in situations like this. This could have led to internal restructuring as members vied for leadership roles or sought to establish a new hierarchy. I can't find it anywhere online that definitively states who now leads the group, but from what I've gathered, at the very least, the mouthpiece now seems to be a woman named Aurora. In fact, if I were to wager my life savings, which is not very much, I would wager that Aurora is likely the new head of the group now. The group is still maintaining their robust online presence. They're still continuing to produce content, engaging with followers through social media, live streams, and other digital platforms. But they're really hitting online e-commerce hard. So they're continuing to sell a lot of the spiritual products that they previously offered, but they're really ramping it up. These range from healing services to various new age paraphernalia as a source of income. And I know Aurora has a few books out there. I'm not going to link them in my show notes because I don't want any of you to read them nor spend your money on it, but I digress. At the end of the day, the rebranding to 5D Full Disclosure signifies the group's attempt to survive and adapt after the loss of their charismatic leader. It allowed the group to continue to spread its message and maintain their community even as they faced scrutiny, allegations of abuse, and the challenges of moving past the death of Mother God. And there you have it. I have presented you with a journey through the cosmic twist and earthly turns of Love Has Won, which I guess is now drifting through the astral plane as 5D Full Disclosure. But Amy Carlson's legacy is definitely a star chart of high hopes and probably a lot harder landings. A reminder that the path to enlightenment is probably a path to absolute fucking disaster. Love Has Won is a prime example that the quest for spiritual truth can sometimes leave you with more questions than answers. The disciples of Love Has Won sought the universe, but they found themselves back to where they started, stuck on Earth with us anxiety-ridden and depressed human beings. So what's the takeaway here? This is what I think it is. This is my personal opinion. Take it, leave it, do whatever. But in my opinion, if your spiritual leader exits stage left and the best plan is a rebrand with a new website and what you perceive to be a catchy name, it might be time to admit that you might just be in a glorified book club with a few extra steps. Whether you see these followers as completely insane or starry-eyed believers, one thing is for sure. In the cosmos of cults, Love Has Won has carved out a constellation all its own. And before I end the episode, I have one word of advice for everybody listening. Keep your feet on the ground and your eyes open for the next guru who claims they can walk on water. Spoiler alert, they probably fucking can't. If you liked what you heard today, please hit the subscribe button wherever you listen. Give me a review, 5 stars, and I will love you forever. You can find me on social media everywhere at f.pod except for Instagram. It is f._pod. Website f.pod.com. Patreon f.pod for exclusive content, ad-free episodes, early episodes, bonus episodes, archived episodes, free stickers, and a ton of other shit that I am too lazy to name right now.